Hello everybody, today I am doing a tag video. I haven't done a tag video in the longest time, but I saw one that caught my eye. I really liked the look of it, so I thought I would do it. I wasn't tagged by anybody, but I will link the makers of the original tag down below as well as the questions in case you want to do it. I've also made a really horrible mistake in writing the questions in silver. You can barely see that. So if I'm like this at the paper, then I'm sorry. What was I thinking? So question number 1 is, why do you read classics and how often do you read classics? I used to read classics. I used to read classics quite a lot, especially during university, and it wasn't just because I had to read classics, but I think around the time, around sort of 17, 18, 19, that sort of age, I did tend to read quite a lot, and a whole sort of love of classics and classic literature sort of grew from that, and I really enjoyed reading them. I think as to why I like reading classics, transportation, I suppose, much like any book that you read, going to other countries, going to other time periods, it's so fascinating. And I think as well, reading historical fiction or something like that, sort of nowadays, authors have to do a lot of research. If an author in the 1800s was writing in their time, they had a very clear viewpoint of that period in history because they were part of it. What is a period, country, culture that you haven't read many classics from and would like to? Most of my reading still takes place primarily in the UK or Iceland or 1920s America. I would love to read sort of more abroad. Italy, I don't know why I was going to say Italy. Italy, I would love to read more into. I would also like to read more sort of future sci-fi classics. It's a sort of genre that I've delved a little bit into, but not a whole lot. Question number 3, what modern book do you think will be a classic in 100 years' time? I think this is quite a tricky question because a lot of modern books are sort of getting considered as classics. A lot of books that were written, maybe 20 years ago are sort of getting considered classics. The likes of G.M. Coetzee, Margaret Atwood, Alan Hollinghurst, people like that, are already sort of getting that status. You can sort of tell when something's going to last a long time. My answer would be, and it sort of already is a classic, but then I don't know how it's going to be considered in 100 years, so I'm still sort of counting it, is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I just think this is it's not even that amazing, it's not one of my favourite books of all time, but I just think it's a really important book, and especially important for young people to read. And it's a great look at childhood, it's a great look at family and loneliness that we experience during childhood. I don't care what the author says, it's a great look at autism and how people react when someone isn't normal or doesn't fit into their definition of normal. Another one that I'm going to mention, and it's a bit of a weird one, but bear with me because I think it has the potential to be really big and sort of go on for a long time. David Walliams' children's books. I've read a good few of David Walliams' books. People say that he is the modern Roald Dahl. You can see the comparisons, definitely. A lot of the stories include adventures, the meeting of different sort of quirky characters. I also feel like his books are so honest, and things like gender, and specifically The Boy in the Dress, is really delved into, but not in a sort of preachy way. It looks at identity. I just think they are really great books for kids. Apart from that, I used to love The Railway Children as well. I don't know if that's considered a classic, I'm pretty sure it is, but I used to love that. Number 6 is, what is your favourite classic cover? This has got to be one of my favourite classic covers. I really like these editions. They are from, who are they published by? Splinter in New York apparently. But I love this watercolour painting that they have. They're so pretty. I don't know if they do loads of these. I know I've seen Wuthering Heights in this edition. I don't know if I've seen many others, but I do love this one. I think it's so pretty. Another beautiful set I have are these set of British myths and legends, and this is from the Folio Society. If anyone isn't aware of what the Folio Society is, it's just every book lover's dream. These cost about £40 per book or something like that, but they're beautiful. I have Heroes and Saints, and they all look like this. This is Marvels and Magic, and this is History and Romance. And like I say again, these are so pretty. On the inside as well, they are fully illustrated, just such lovely books. I think a lot of classic authors I would have liked to have seen more literature from them, but the two that stand out in my mind are Anne Bronte, because I think she's severely underrated as an author. I think her sisters get all the credit, and I think her two books that she did write, Agnes Grey and Wildfell Hall, are both brilliant. I think they're very underrated, and I would love to have seen more work from her. I know she did do poetry and things like that, which I also love, but I would just have liked to have seen more books from her, definitely. The other one is Charles Dickens. I'm not going to lie, I haven't read everything from him. I've barely read anything, in fact. I've read a couple of books, but what I have read is fantastic, and one of the ones that I read was the last thing he ever wrote, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which he didn't get to finish, and it was so sad because that book is so good. The next question is, what is your least favourite classic? For me, this is absolutely easy. Don't have any qualms about saying this whatsoever. It's a lot of people's favourite classics, but I hate it. Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and Alice Through the Looking Glass, whichever one you want to say. I've read this and read this and read this. I've never liked it. As a kid, I hated it. I hated the Disney film of it. It used to just freak me out a bit. My nana actually got me a pair of really beautiful illustrated editions of Alice in Wonderland. I don't think she knows me very well because I hate those books. It just does not interest me to ever go into this world ever again. I hate it, and I hate all the films around it. The stupid one that was out last year was rubbish, the one that was out in 2010 was rubbish. Just, no, don't like it at all. Question 9 is, what is your favourite translated classic? I love Icelandic sagas. I don't know if you count them as classics or the more like classical literature, but I love Icelandic classics. I really want to read more. University again introduced me to Icelandic literature, and I love it. I love reading the academic ones like the Eddas and all the poetry and the sagas and things like that. I'll also say Lady's Paradise, which was translated from French, I believe. The other one I wanted to mention was All Quiet on the Western Front, which is translated from German, and it is the war in a German point of view, and this book was fantastic. I loved this book. I think I reviewed it on this channel a long time ago, so if you want to go into the depths of my old videos, then you can go and check it out, but I really loved this book. Number 10 is, what is your favourite modern classic? So this is a classic published after 1900. I have so many written down here, but I mean it's just like a list at this point. Any of F. Scott Fitzgerald's work I have put, which is true, Great Gatsby and This Side of Paradise in particular. Diary of Anne Frank, I read this really recently actually and loved it. I loved her honest writing style, and I love, again, like I say, I love books set in that period in history. It just fascinates me so much. Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. I gotta say that To the Lighthouse is definitely my favourite Virginia Woolf over Mrs. Dalloway. Richard Yates' Revolutionary Road is another one, another sort of modern classic that I really enjoy. Revolutionary Road is the only one I've read, so if you have any Richard Yates recommendations, then do leave them down in the comments. Number 11 is, what classic literary places would you like to visit? See, I'm quite lucky in the fact that I live in England, so I'm like a stone's throw away from a lot of historical places. I live in Yorkshire, and it's great to be able to go out to the moors, which of course so many books are set in there. I mean, probably most famously Wuthering Heights is set on the North Yorkshire moors, and I also live very close to Whitby as well, which is famously where Dracula came from. So I am quite lucky in that I do live quite close to a lot of places, but I maybe would love to go to the different houses of the different female authors especially. Question number 12. What is a classic that you'd recommend for a child? Okay, so a classic for a child, I would probably recommend what I read as a kid, Secret Garden, and Peter Pan as well is another really great one. For all it's dark, it's really great. Also, A Little Princess is really good. And the fact that there are film adaptations of all these as well, I think would get a kid interested. If you maybe showed them the film first, they'd maybe want to read the book, or vice versa. As for kids that are maybe a bit older, maybe kids 10, 11, 12, that sort of age, I would recommend Agatha Christie. I think she is a great author for kids to get into classics, because I think her writing style is quite modern and the genre that she writes is quite modern. You know, the thriller mystery genre is very, very huge these days. I do think she's a bit more interesting than, it's gonna hurt me to say it, but she is a bit more interesting than Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes. I think people get this common misconception of Sherlock Holmes being really interesting and like, oh my god, run around, that sort of thing, and shoot people, and it's not really like that. It's more like two guys sat in a room. I think Agatha Christie is more accessible to kids, and I think they would really enjoy that, and I think again that would lead them on to be able to read things like Sherlock Holmes or other classic detective works. And the final question is, what is your favourite classic you'd recommend to everybody? I mean, a lot of these books that I've mentioned in this video are my favourites, especially like the modern classics. A lot of them are my favourites. I'm just looking at some of the ones I've got on my shelves now. Virginia Woolf, definitely recommend. Stoner, that's a really good one. Stoner by, what's his name? Somebody Williams. That's a really good one. I recommend that. Wind in the Willows. Didn't really like Wind in the Willows, so I'm not going to recommend that. Emma by Jane Austen. Any of Jane Austen. I haven't really mentioned Jane Austen in this video, but I do love her book. Tess of the D'Urbervilles. That's a really good one. Looking at what else we have. Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. Really great book. Bit longer. Another war book again, but really, really enjoy it. So that's it for this tag. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've enjoyed talking about classics again, actually. This channel used to be a lot about classics and I barely mentioned them recently, but maybe that's something I need to get into. I have a lot to read.